as long as you are happening to other people, then you matter because you're affecting their perception of the world. And so once you stop happening, then that's it, right? So
unless in this case, now if you're a hermit, you're already dead.
Yep. No, maybe. Because as a hermit, you are happening to, I guess, like a hillside or something. Butterscotch. Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 106 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast, Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth, and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam, and I'm speaking into a microphone.
I'm Sam, and I make art.
And today is July 11th, 2017. Warning. Anything can happen on this show. There's going to be profanity, and we're going to talk about some stuff. So if you don't like to hear swears, get your face away from the computer or radio or whatever it is you're using to listen.
Also, can I say I'm just very impressed that with every date, you're somehow able to
put some stank on it.
But a few of them have not. A few of them have been stank free, which I have to say is always enormously disappointing.
I like to zag. You know, you gotta.
You can't always
guessing.
Right. You can't always zag because you got to be zigzagging. So
That's right.
sometimes you got to zig, and
If you zag 4 times, you end up right where you started.
That's right.
Or is it?
It's
3?
like a right turn.
Yeah. All right. So we got some pretty zany news this week. All right. So first thing. We announced a couple episodes ago that we are opening up our mailbox over at mailbox.bscotch.net. So if people wanted to send us
real things,
whatever, they could.
Although I think we did then forget to mention it in all subsequent episodes.
We did, which is probably for the best because of what happened next, which was Giant Muskrat, one of our listeners, and also one of the folks who was involved in the Shenanijam.
And also an actual giant muskrat.
Yeah. So Giant Muskrat could not participate in the Shenanijam, but he wanted to be involved, he or she. And so instead, Giant Muskrat just periodically would pop into the Discord channel and buy pizzas for people
across the world,
all around the world, which was awesome. And so we opened up our mailbox, and sure enough, Giant Muskrat, in true Giant Muskrat form, obliged by sending us a 5-pound gummy bear.
It was only embiggened candy items.
Yeah, he said, I've sent you some embiggened candy items. And we got a 2-pound Rice Krispie treat and 2 half-pound Reese's cups.
The best part was that I was gone last week for vacation, so I walked in on Monday morning,
and you're just like, what?
And there's this huge Rice Krispie. It's like a 3 foot by 3 foot monster.
There's still like a whole third of it left.
Yeah, and it's taking up Seth's like entire kitchen counter.
It is. Okay, so here's the thing.
So
Rice
like,
Krispies
what happened?
Not dense.
No.
Marshmallows, not dense.
Rice Krispies
If you have
just air.
If you have a
basically.
2-pound Rice Krispie treat, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's like a football field.
It's a monster.
And then that gummy bear, we got like 2 ears off of it. And that's all we got so far.
Yeah.
This is legit. This is 13,000 calories of snacks.
We'll be fueling ourselves off this for months if we can keep it all good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks.
Or one
Thanks.
Adam lunch if he
right.
forgets his lunch one day.
I've actually been very impressed because I've recently been trying to, get healthier a little bit. So I'm trying to eat fewer entire bags of things and fewer entire pounds of things, and that's actually been going pretty well. And then we got this 13,000 calories of delicious things, especially the Reese's cups, because I fucking love Reese's.
Yeah. It's like Adam kicks in the door on Wednesday. He's like, good news, everybody. I'm going to be, from this point forward, I'm going to be eating healthy. And then like, what are these?
Then we open these boxes. And my favorite candy in the universe is Reese's, So then it's these giant things. And I was like, all right, I'm going to try to control myself.
I'll do one. I'll eat 1 cup.
But I didn't, though.
It's a pound.
I only ate half of 1 cup over 3 days.
Yeah, it's like a pie. We cut it into 8 slices.
Yeah.
Are there any more of it left?
Nope.
No, it's
Damn you all.
Well, the problem is like because we cut it up into slices, then all of a sudden it was like in these edible chunks, and so everybody kind of would go and take a slice.
Made it easy.
Yeah.
Yep.
So also I have a story. It doesn't really go anywhere, but for some reason I have to tell it.
Is it related to this one?
No. So this was yesterday. I needed to get a hose.
Okay.
So for some reason, I was in a flow state. I went to Home Depot and I was like John Wick. I was just like,
you're the hose man.
I know exactly where this hose is going to be. And I was just going. So I parked my car in the Home Depot parking lot and I get out and I'm just fucking marching toward the door like the Terminator to get this hose. And I get up to the door and it doesn't open. Instead, it just opens like 1 inch and then it just sits there. And
it was a challenge.
Yeah, without missing a beat, I just fucking grabbed the door and just like pried it open and just because it's like it's the two like sliding doors. So I just marched up there and just grabbed the door and just wrenched it open and just kept going. And I was thinking the whole time, I was like, I bet that looked really awesome.
It sounds awesome.
Went and got my hose. Went home.
It's nice to be strong enough to pry doors open with your bare Terminator hands.
I think, but the problem, did you actually stop for a moment first, or was it just all one motion?
It's just one motion. Somehow I was just better. Like, in my mind, as I was walking to this door, I was just like, this door better open fast enough because I'm going in that Home Depot.
It would have been even better though if you, as you were walking up to it and saw that it wasn't going to open, you just punched it. Both fists though, so one into each door.
Just through.
Punched them both right off of their little rails.
Yes.
And so they just came flying into the space and shattered across the floor as you walk in.
I thought you were going to say that the reason
crunching
the
over
doors
the debris
only open a little bit is because it was actually closed, and you just like
That's what I was thinking.
broke into Home Depot, stole a hose,
I think
somebody comes up there like, we're closed. That's like pushes them away.
grabs them by the mouth and opens their mouth until their head explodes.
So there's that scene in The Fast and the Furious, I think number 7, where The Rock he's in an arm cast.
When he flexes his cast off.
He goes, he says to his daughter, he says, Daddy's got to go to work. He explodes the cast off his arm. And then the next scene is there's a drone flying in the air, and then The Rock hits the drone by ramping off of an overpass with an ambulance, crushes the drone.
And we're talking about a military drone, not one of those.
Yes, like a Predator drone.
Yeah.
He hits it with an ambulance, and then and then the ambulance is laying on its side, and you're like, oh no, is he okay? Because he was just in a giant crash. The ambulance is on his side, and he just punches the glass off of the windshield.
Like the whole windshield
pops off, and now it's like a vertical door, and he walks out of the ambulance like it's a door. And I was just like, I feel like sometimes you gotta do things in life with that level of
You gotta be the
intensity.
Rock.
Yeah. So I did that to get my hose.
That's
that was
awesome.
what I did. All right, so Sam, you were gone. You were on vacation. So actually, Sam was gone last week, even though we had an episode because we pre-recorded it, which is why it was unusual.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
So let's hear about this trip. Where'd you go?
Yeah, so I went to Yellowstone and the Tetons with Diana's family, and for those who aren't familiar, it's the 2 national parks that are pretty close together, about an hour away from each other, up in the western United States. And the Yellowstone is full of all sorts of really weird geological features because it's actually a huge volcano.
Yeah.
That's just
It's a super volcano.
Super volcano is just chilling underground. And so what this means is that there's tons of really weird geysers, sulfur springs. There's a lot of rotten egg smell, and then a lot of very strange pools. That basically, if you
volcanoes have a certain stink.
Yeah. But if you fall in one of these pools, it will basically just murder you.
Yeah.
So
murder pools.
Very exciting. Also lots of bison, lots of bears, and elk. So that's Yellowstone. And then the Tetons is just south of that. And it's this big mountain range that was created from some big tectonic activity. And they're huge. And they just kind of jut up out of the middle of like a meadow. So it's an interesting sort of idyllic looking place because you look out and it's just this green sort of grass meadow. There's little lakes and rivers that are basically flat, like not much going on. And then there's just mountains all of a sudden.
But it turns out all those little lakes and streams are just poison.
Well, those ones are fine. They're far enough away from that.
And it turns out you're walking over grass and it's actually oozing poison gas.
It's actually murder grass. And it's made of fire.
But they had all these warnings that, they're like, animals are dangerous. And remember we talked about taking selfies with animals a few episodes back, and they like everything they hand you has a thing on it where it's like, don't turn your back on an animal. Don't get within 25 feet or 25 yards of the bison. And don't get within 100 yards of bears and wolves because they can close that distance in like 4 seconds. Yeah. They don't give a shit. Yeah. And so it was really funny to look at all this documentation because clearly this is a problem where people are just like being idiots. And 2 things happened I thought were of note. One is that we're at this place called Grand Prismatic Spring, which is this huge sort of boiling weird pot of water that it's seeping out and over. And as a result, there's a bunch of weird bacteria that grow on the very outer edges of this where the water's slightly cooler. And each of them is a different color. And so the water is by itself very blue because of a bunch of chemicals in it. And then the very outer ring of this thing is red and orange. And so it actually like full rainbows into the center of this thing. and it's boiling hot, and it's just sitting there steaming. It's just like it's a really weird, smelly thing. And we were walking down and away from this, and they have a bunch of signs which is like, "Don't touch the water because it's scalding water." But you're standing on this little on this sort of pathway that's just on wood planks that are up above. There's no fencing or anything. So of course, if you fell, you would it's a bunch of rocks, so you're not gonna like fall in. You're not that close. But Diana and I were walking back to the car, and we see some like 10-year-old. He's just kind of like looking at the ground because the water is just sort of flowing over the ground very thinly. And of course, there's the signs like, "Don't touch the water, don't touch the bacterial mats," because this is all bacteria on there. And the kid's like looking at it, and then Diana sees him bend down, and he puts his hand in there, and then just suddenly like yanks it back. He's like, "Ow!" And we're like, "What? How? Why?"
The sign is not just a suggestion. I love the idea that basically, so this super volcano in Yellowstone is basically, it's predicted that if it were to erupt, it would basically annihilate like the Western hemisphere.
Yes.
And then it would create this ash cloud that would probably choke off most of life on Earth, right? And it's just this sort of incredible nuclear devastation level thing, just kind of like chilling there. And then we all just go over there and we're like, "Hey, look at this hot water. Like, this is
touch it.
This is so warm. This is crazy."
Well, my favorite thing about the trip is that, I think we've talked a lot on this podcast about, making your own definition of success for yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what does it mean for you to have a good life or a good profession or a good work day? And, this does extend to vacations. So what is your actual style of vacationing? And I think traditionally in our family, especially when vacationing like with our dads, it's a very chilled out thing. Like we go to a place to not do things. That's the goal.
We vacate.
Yes. Our brains, our bodies are just like,
we're gone.
I'm going to go to a place where everything's taken care of and not care about anything for like 5 days. Diana's mother, Wendy, has the opposite definition, which is she needs to be basically completely exhausted by 4 p.m. in order for it to be like a good vacation day.
It's activity time.
So we would be out hiking, and the first day we hiked like 9 miles, and this is in high altitude.
Yeah, that's a rough hike.
It was toasty. Next day was like 5 miles. The next day I think was 6 miles. So it was just every day it was just more and more mileage. And then finally, one of the final days, there's this path called Uncle Tom's Path, and there's this guy named Uncle Tom who used to take people back in like the early days of the park
and murder them.
No, he would sort of, it was like a first tourist attraction. Okay. Is he would sort of.
That was much.
There was a bunch of ropes and a bunch of like stairs he built that went down into one of the canyons in Yellowstone, like really far down. And so it was this kind of adventuring thing. And Wendy, like I think it was about like 3:00, and Wendy's like, "Oh, like I'm not tired yet. We should go do that." And it says like as you get closer to where this thing starts turning into real stairs to go just into a gorge, there's a sign, and it says, "Be very careful because this is extremely difficult," because it's like 300 steps down and then back up. And
this is just like the boiling water sign.
Yep. It's like, it's extremely difficult. And then it says, there's a warning. It's like, if you have any asthma problems, any heart problems, do not go down this thing. Mm-hmm. And so we're all like, yes, this is going to be good, right? It's a good adventure. Climb down this thing and climb back up. Diana and I make it back up in like 5 minutes of sort of just like trudging up these stairs, just completely exhausted, sitting on a log.
We're basically doing like 300 miniature squats.
Yeah.
To get up these stairs.
And it's kind of like, it's a steel platform, of course, but it doesn't feel particularly safe. You're on the edge of a gorge, so it's very exciting. We get up to the top and we're waiting. And finally we spot Wendy in the distance down below, struggling up this staircase thing. And it was absolutely hysterical because we get up to the top and I was like, "Wendy, have you had enough for today?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm so tired." And we immediately just go home and everybody just fills up with a bunch of food. And then it was like the most quiet night. Everyone's just like, "Oh."
It was leg day.
Yep. So the vacation was more of a activity vacation. Let's run around, let's take pictures, that sort of thing. But it was really good to sort of just get out. And I find Seth saw me, I think, yesterday at the gym, just staring out into the parking lot, vacantly.
I saw you over there for like 5 minutes, just staring out the window. What kind of an exercise is this?
So I find it's I feel like your brain kind of expands to fill the space that it's given, which is why I really like. When we drive up to Iowa, for example, there's like a 5-hour drive and it's very open country. And even staring out into a parking lot, I find it very nice to have big scenery to like big open spaces to sort of just vacate into my brain. parking lots are
To
one of
sort
them.
vacantly stare at.
Yeah, mountain ranges are another. And so I found it was very relaxing in a different way. Not the activity, but the sort of when we get to the top of a mountain or something, just taking 10 minutes and just spacing out into a huge gorge was fantastic. So that's what I did a lot of.
Was it gorgeous?
It was gorgeous. I made that joke so many times.
Is that the origin of the word? It might
Yeah,
be. Yeah, that makes sense.
Looks like a gorge. It's gorgeous.
Which when you apply it to like a person's, it's hard.
Wow, you look like a gorge.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
Hey,
It's for horses.
Speaking of things being a gas that occupy the space they're given, let's talk about work.
Today marks the first day of Spearmint Summer.
First day of Spearmint Summer. What we're doing some experiments. Spearmint Summer. The first experiment is we are switching to a 4-day work week, where the fourth day, Thursday, is a jam day, which is an extended work day that goes from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., basically. So our total sort of hour tally for the week goes from 40 to 36 in terms of sort of like when we're all in the office. We all tend to actually do a lot more stuff outside of that anyways, but the idea being that spreading your work out across 5 days may not actually allow you to get more done. It just stretches the same amount of work over a longer period of time. And so we're gonna do an experiment and see.
Is that true?
Is that true? So for the next 4 weeks, we're gonna be doing this 4-day work week, and we'll see what happens.
The best part of the experiment is we won't be able to tell if that's true.
Yep. So it's technically the sort of sloppiest kind of experiment possible. So really, when it's all done, we have to just kind of dig deep and reflect and think: Is this going well?
Does it seem good?
Does it seem good? Or does it seem like, the ideal scenario is we at least just get as much done as we used to, and then we also have an extra day of sort of downtime where we can kind of take a step back and think about stuff. So I don't know. We'll see
what happens.
So that's starting today. And then otherwise we have a tool inside the studio we're calling it the Shenana feed. And it is sort of a blogging / twittering kind of a thing.
A blittering?
Yeah.
Twogging? It's a twog.
Twog.
Sounds like a dance move.
So we made this because it was an attempt to get away from meetings. And the idea is anytime you make progress or have some kind of a milestone on a project, then you write up a quick update about what happened, and then you tag that thing. So if I want to know something that's, that Sam's been working on, I can either look up posts by him, or I can look up the project or whatever, and I can just get up to date on stuff without having to go, hey, Sam, can I take 3 hours of your time while you tell me about stuff that, that I need to know?
And this goes back to the idea of asynchronous work that we've been sort of honing in the studio, which is making sure that people are able to just continue working without necessarily breaking other people's focus at the wrong time. So you allow people to choose when they get the update as opposed to having to pull someone in for an update in real time.
Because a meeting should be about making decisions, not about getting information, because the information should be available. And so that's the idea.
You should already have it when you enter the meeting.
Yeah. And so that's kind of the idea behind the Shenana feed. But with the start of Spearmint Summer, we realized that the Shenana feed actually had some untapped potential that we are starting to dig into. And so a week and a half ago, we kind of had a sit down chat to figure out, what kinds of things can we do to reinforce like a really strong culture among our studio. And we landed on this idea that we're calling always know why. And it's the concept that you should always strive to understand the full context and importance of anything that you're doing. So if you are making video games like we are, then depending on what your role is in the studio or whatever, you should have a really good sense of what everybody's doing around you, how your work impacts those people and vice versa. And also you should have a broader understanding of the industry that you're operating in, the position of the company that you're working in terms of like, what's your runway, what are your sales looking like and stuff like that. And so the more information you have, then the better decision-making you can do, right? And so we realized that we could actually use the Shenana feed as a means of sort of exploring this idea. So now we've moved from just sort of like quick one sentence progress reports on things using the Shenanifeed for people to really dig deep. And at the end of each day, people go through and they talk about what they did that day, but also why. Like, why did you do those things? And like really go deep and figure out, does this matter? Should I be doing something else? Could I have done this differently or better? You know, what are some problems with my process? Just kind of like really dig into what you did that day. And it's definitely been good. So we've only been doing it since last week so far. And already it's the case.
Last week we were missing 2 people in the studio.
Yeah.
And so
this is kind of our first full on attempt.
And even the first one, like this morning when I went to sit down and read all of them, it was like a short novel.
There's a lot of stuff going on. Yep.
Yeah.
And because it's also the case that by writing these things, because we can also comment on each other's posts, right? And if we're all seeking to understand what each other is doing, then that means we ask each other questions as well, or make comments about stuff that other people are doing. And so when you write your post, it is a sort of an exploration of what you did, but you also need to convey it in a way that some other person who isn't an expert can actually understand it, right? So it is practice in terms of thinking deeply about the things you're doing, but it's also practice in terms of communicating complex ideas to somebody in a simple way. So it's been really good. It's definitely going to take, I think, some time before we all feel like we know how to use it well, I think.
Yeah, well, we also you don't want it to be necessarily to become an administrative burden sort of piece where it's like, oh, fuck, I got to go write my 7 pages of Shenanifeed thoughts.
Well, I think like exercising, it will probably feel like that at the beginning.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, oh shit, like I got to do this thing. But again, like exercising, once you've done it for a week or two, then you start to feel like, this feels pretty good. Like I can see
what it's doing for you.
I can see the benefits.
It's also, I think, it's a good sort of ritual for the end of the day because, so I was writing mine yesterday and I'd been keeping track of my, all my to-dos on just a piece of paper. And so I went through and sort of, read all the stuff that I'd crossed out and then realized like I had done just a tremendous amount of stuff over the course of the day. And so it's really fun to actually recap it for everybody, put it in context for everybody, and make sure anything that's sort of weird, it gets explained in a way that people can understand.
It has a really useful sort of side benefit because not only does it help you understand what you've been doing and understand why, but it gives you an opportunity to try to explain things in such a way that everybody else in the studio can understand, which means having to put yourself in other people's shoes to ask, what is it that they would need to know about this in order to understand what I'm doing? What's the most important part of this that is actually worth talking about to people? So that you have to have already done all of the thinking of what's important and why and stuff, but then also think about it in the context of others, which is far harder, but also far more valuable, because that's what lets you dig the deepest is to try to forget your own context and put yourself in somebody else's shoes.
So a big question for this though is why we would require this, because this is a lot of people. A lot of people would ask, if you just want someone to do a job, why are you making them do 20 minutes of writing?
We don't just want people to do a job.
Exactly.
We don't want ourselves to just do a job.
So I think while it's the case that everybody oftentimes wants autonomy, but I think it's an interesting sort of buzzword nowadays that I don't know if people really understand what it means.
I think people think it means I get to do what I want.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the reality is it means that you are empowered to make good decisions.
And bad decisions.
And then be held responsible for that.
Responsible for it. So it's a lot more, I think it's a bit more stressful than actually just being, say,
having a to-do list handed to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
But our goal is to make it so that everybody here has such a good sense of the context of the studio and all the operations we're doing that anybody at any time could ask a really good question that could basically change the course of what we're doing. And the only way to do that is to sort of keep on honing this sense of what's happening, how it relates to everybody else, and get the sort of thought processes going for that.
Yep.
So
I think it also relates to something that I think we may have talked about earlier, but the problem of definitions, which is the idea that like if two people fundamentally disagree about a thing, then oftentimes it's because they actually are just using words differently.
correct.
Like they mean different things when they say the same thing. So they could argue and bicker and whatever forever, and they will never actually understand each other, right? Because again, they don't have the full context of the discussion. They don't understand where the other person's coming from. So the idea with the Shenanifeed is by seeing other people's thought processes going into the decisions that they're making, when you do go to have a discussion with them and you say, you know, what if we did this? Like, what if we changed this thing about what you're doing and reoriented it this way? You aren't just making a sort of a blind suggestion that they've already thought about, because you should know what they've already considered, right? So it should kind of like speed up understanding, speed up discussions, and just allow all of us
and it
to,
makes feedback for that exact reason be far more valuable.
Yeah.
Because the problem is most of the feedback that most of us get most of the time is from somebody who doesn't have the full picture, which means they just catch a little piece of a thing where they notice something that seems wrong, but they can't possibly know if it actually is wrong because they don't understand the context in which that thing lives. And so whether or not it's actually good feedback then is basically, random, and it's more likely to not be useful feedback because that person doesn't have the context.
Yeah.
So by getting everybody on board so that everybody has roughly the same broader picture of what's going on, then everybody's contribution to everybody else's work,
Quality goes up.
the quality goes way up, and the amount of just useless stuff. Because we have this even with each other, with the studio in general, we have this all the time where people have suggestions that would be good suggestions in a case where the context didn't matter, right? But because they didn't have the context, then we actually burn a significant amount of time explaining to people why that idea doesn't make sense because they didn't have some piece of information they would have needed to know that it didn't make sense.
Yep.
So this is kind of an attempt to make this all asynchronous where we can just give all the info and then let people sort it through themselves so that they can now provide really good and useful feedback.
Yeah. And it is the case. It is the case, I think, that it's hard to keep on top of everything. Like it's impossible.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the idea is by reading through what everybody's doing, then we get at least a decent sense of it, right? You're not going to like memorize what everybody did every day or whatever. Cause like we were actually talking the other day about how it's hard to even remember the names of all the college classes you took, right? Like that's not the point. The point is to instill just a general sense of what's going on. So you know what kinds of questions to ask. So that's kind of what we're doing with Spearmint Summer. And we'll be reporting every week on just kind of how things are going. And we have one final thing to chat about before we hit questions, which is the following question. Do you die 3 times?
All right. So let me.
Do you want to answer this first or you just want to launch into?
Well, let me roll it over you first.
Okay.
And then you can
Steamroll us.
make your decision.
My gut response is no, that doesn't make any sense.
Well, so
prove me wrong.
Again, this is a definitions problem. So
What do you
there's
mean by die?
it's basically a degrees of death
And
thing.
live.
So because I was listening to a new song from Macklemore yesterday called "Glorious," and in it, he has one of those lines about how they say that the time you actually die is when the last person says your name, like the last time someone says your name or something like that. As in when the memory of you fades, then like that's like the final death, right? There's that.
So
one.
when your legacy dies.
Yes, and then there's of
So
course
you could be alive and a hermit and therefore be dead.
potentially. So are there 3 forms of death? Because the other one is the Benjamin Franklin quote that I think I pulled out on the podcast before, which is that most people die at 25 and aren't buried until they're 75, right? So that's the one where it's like there's a form of death that comes with essentially giving up on yourself or whatever your dreams are for the life you want to live, right? And then the third one, of course, is just dying, being biologically ceased.
Is it possible that these are all just metaphors?
It might be possible.
Except for the one about actually.
Yeah,
dying.
except for the one about actually. Yeah, of course. They're all metaphors.
So-
but I think it's an interesting concept to talk about these little deaths that might happen along the way or at different points.
Well, I think all of these things sort of revolve around the idea that your life specifically matters in the context of other people's lives.
Yeah.
Right. So whatever you're doing doesn't really matter unless other people are somehow impacted by it or engaged with it or whatever. Right. So that's the idea of the legacy. Other people remembering you somehow matters. Why? I don't know. That's just how we feel about it.
It's just important.
And similarly, the idea of like when you physically die, we talked about the idea of like a person being an event, right? Like an event that is happening to the world. And as long as you are happening to other people, then you matter because you're affecting their perception of the world. And so once you stop happening, then that's it. Right. So
Unless in this case, now if you're a hermit, you're already dead
yes.
under this definition of actual physical death.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. No, maybe. Because as a hermit, you are happening to, I guess, like a hillside or something.
Well, you said to people. You said to
Yeah,
people
yeah,
specifically.
Yep. So I don't know. What do you think, Sam?
I mean, I think it's just an interesting idea to talk about the different degrees to which you can essentially
Be alive.
be alive, right? So one is if you're having a legacy, the other one is being biologically living, and the other one is sort of living the way that you want to live.
Well, I think it's actually it's being what it really is being alive in different forms. So being an
degrees.
image in the minds of, no, it's not even degrees. It's being an entity that exists in the minds of other people.
Ooh, okay.
Basically a mind ghost. So you could be,
You're a meme.
you're a meme. That's exactly right. Like
The idea of Adam.
yeah, exactly. The
persists.
idea that everybody here, like they have some imagining in their brain. They have some sort of cobbled together figure in their brains of an Adam ghost, right? That is their belief of what I am as an entity, right?
So
So
wait
that's
a
the thing
minute.
that is
Wait
literally
a
that is
minute.
alive in your brains right now.
Right, hold on.
Running around, it's poking your brain pieces.
So are you saying that when you are thinking about somebody, you're actually just being haunted?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Well, it's more like, I mean, you're simulating them.
You're being haunted
simulating,
by
yeah.
their.
This is why it's actually gotten freaky with Diana and I, because I've used so many of our general sort of screams about stuff and like our dadisms from our dad growing up, where he would just like, if there's a spider, he'd be like, hideous.
Yeah.
And
There's a hideous spider over there.
that's the exact quote. And so I just like, for some reason, I don't know, the last year, those just started coming out of me. And I don't know what the fuck
It's in your
happened.
genes.
It's in my genes. But now it's gotten to the point where something will happen and Diana will, in a mocking voice, say the exact thing that I'm about to say.
Yep.
So she's got like a really good simulation.
Except pretty soon,
in her brain.
it's not going to be a mocking voice, and it's just going to be her voice. It's just going to be how she does
Well,
it.
I think is mind ghosts because they literally possess you, right?
Right.
But if you're possessed by something long enough, sort of like an anamorph, then you become it.
Yeah, you don't want to stay in
bear
falcon form for more than 2
Because
hours.
then you're there forever, right? And it's the same deal. And really all we are as people is a crazy complicated population of hauntings.
Whoa.
That are all talking to each other in our brains, and that we are taking on slowly taking on the form of the dominant figures in that.
When they
population.
also say that, you sort of take on many of the personality aspects of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right?
What about the 4?
No, but it has to be 5.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Maybe it's probably up to 5.
Right.
Beyond that is probably just you can't
benefit.
spend enough time with
Yeah.
that many people, to be effectively haunted.
But I think really that's just a specific number given to the idea that haunting takes time. Right?
It does.
And you got to pay attention to what's haunting you right now. Right. And so whoever the dominant figures are, those are the ones that define you the most, which of course is obvious. It makes
So
sense.
this does mean that if you are spending a lot of time with somebody you don't like, then you got to leave because pretty soon
You will be them.
You will be them because they're haunting.
But
you.
then you won't. But then you have to not like yourself now, or just you are somebody else, and so it's fine.
Okay, let me ask. Wait.
Okay, go ahead.
Are there some people who are haunt resistant?
That's where I was going.
Because
Yeah.
I'm thinking about this. We're like,
If you're closed-minded,
yes. If you're open minded, does that really just mean you let the ghosts in?
Yeah.
Holy
that's
shit.
what it means to have an open mind.
Holy shit.
Holy ghost. Okay, so
So now I would argue that it doesn't fucking matter who says your name last. It matters how many people you've haunted, because even if they're not talking about you anymore,
You're in there.
You're in there. They are now you in some degree, right? When they have their own kids, they're passing that shit on. You don't even need your
So
genes.
really, when you have kids, really what you're doing is you are making an easily accessible haunting receptacle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Who you can haunt for like
The whole
18
life.
years.
Yeah, and a very focused haunting.
Yeah.
To the point where it's like burned in there.
It's like a one-on-one.
It's a permanent haunt.
You're like,
Yeah.
I'm like,
And actually, this is what you're doing, because you are also controlling the environment that haunted individual lives in, so that they can be haunted by the people you choose,
Right.
if anyone. Because that's what parenting is all
yeah,
about.
because
right?
you're like,
You
hey,
choose
don't be
who haunts
hanging
your
out
kids.
with those
Exactly.
other kids who are bad.
Yeah.
Hang out with these good kids, and then you make sure they get haunted.
they're all
mutual
right.
haunting.
Yeah. This is also why, you want to spend a lot of one-on-one time with your significant other, sort of eye to eye, because like most haunting takes place through the eyes.
Yeah, that's how you
right?
get in.
Yep.
Like that's
Get
how
in
you
there.
send your ghost in there.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're
And
saying
you can also do it through like the phone and stuff, but it's a lot fuzzier, lower resolution kind of a.
so you're saying
haunting.
the final time you die then on the back end, on the legacy
I'm
side.
saying you don't die.
Well,
you might
you would
get-
at some point.
No, because
Are you saying it's like a genetics thing? So there's going to be marginal hauntings passed down.
yeah, but it's not only that. It's because
forever.
now you've changed the entire path of all of everything for everything that interacts with your mind ghost, because now their futures are now determined by the existence of your mind ghost. So that even once your mind ghost itself has been diluted to the point of being homeopathic, so we're like far, far down the line.
Sure.
It doesn't matter anymore because the course that got you there was determined by your earlier mind ghost.
So are you saying that we are all one, Adam? That's essentially what
we're all just.
I'm saying we're all a whole bunch of mind ghosts.
Yeah. Speaking of mind ghosts, I want to get into our first question.
Okay, go for it.
Because this segue was too good. So, all right. So these questions come from podcast.bscotch.net. They're asked by our Bscotch ID users, and some are anonymous. Our first question comes from 30 Extra, who says, I'm loving the book club page. However, the books on the page are all nonfiction. Any recommendation for works of fiction? So talking about mind ghosts, one of the most recent fiction books I read was a book called Infinity Born, which about every 10 minutes I was reading it just blew my fucking mind.
Did you have to go stare into an open parking lot?
Seriously, I read it and I had like an existential crisis afterwards because I was just like, what the fuck does anything even mean? Because the book covers a lot of like high technology stuff. It's set something like 20 or 30 years in the future. And it follows several people, one of which is sort of this next level of genius, like a future Elon Musk, but much, much smarter, right? And his life's work revolves around the idea of backing up human brains into these sort of like quantum computers, bioprinting new bodies for people, and then installing the brain copies into the bodies. So you get like nanites injected into your brain that are constantly mapping your neurons. And then once a day, you would go and sort of back up your brain map.
Wow.
And then if you die, then a perfect copy of your brain is recreated and a new body, which is a perfect copy of your body, is bioprinted and you're back.
They have the same concept in the culture series that I've talked about in the past.
Yeah. So they have all these rules about it, about like it can only be used to restore backups, not to copy, because that would make the legal system completely collapse, right? Because like a perfect copy of you, yeah, because it has all of your memories, it can do everything that you can do, it can sign your name exactly, it has your fingerprint, it knows your social security number, and as far as literally anybody could tell, including itself, it is you, right? And so I guess the question is like, if that's true, if you could make a backup of yourself, even though you've died, and that now is in the world continuing to exist and do everything that you do, and as far as anybody else is concerned, including it's still you. Did you die?
Yep.
Yeah. You died super hard. You just also kept going.
Yeah.
You fully possessed.
Well, right.
Your mind ghost fully possessed another body.
Yeah. And so this
comes back to the event idea that you're a collection of processes that are currently happening.
It's like if you had a birthday party followed by a July 4th celebration. You had two parties. One party ended, another party began. Maybe it's the same guest list, same cake and everything else, but the party stopped once and then it picked up again the next day.
The idea now is like, so right now we have this idea of death as you stop existing, right? But really then, if you go to this model of sort of being able to back yourself up, this comes sort of into like a programming territory where there is now a template of you that like, that's what you are. And then there are just these instances of you that get spawned out into the world. They go and do stuff, but you're still alive because what you are is that particular backup, unique consciousness.
Right. Oh, I guess that's where I would disagree. Like, to me, you're not the template. You're the instance.
Oh, right.
Right. You're the instance. Yeah. You, like, as in what the word you means, as in, because all that means is who, like specifically you, right?
Yep.
But yeah. But the crazy thing is, like, Adam, you back up your brain, right?
Sure.
You get hit by a bus. You're gone.
Yeah, I'm dead.
Tomorrow, Adam walks into work.
He's like, fuck, I got hit by a bus yesterday, guys, and I died.
Maybe my clone got hit by a bus yesterday.
You say my backup.
And now I get to live.
Right. You say my backup got hit by a bus. And I say, hey, do you remember last week when you said blah, blah, blah? And your copy will say, yeah, I remember when I did that. Right.
That's just convenience of language, though.
Right.
It would be too confusing to be like, oh, yeah, my past self,
that was my 92nd self that did that, actually.
Well, because effectively it doesn't matter who did it, because that version of you still has all the memories, right?
Yeah, doesn't matter. So then you wouldn't differentiate, because what would be the point, So you'd still say I, but in the same way, like when you say I right now, even though there aren't clones of yourself, there's not a template backed up somewhere. when you say I right now, you're just a collection of fucking computers that are all talking to each other using chemicals, right?
Right.
And when you say I, you mean some vague abstraction over across, all of these little tiny.
Because the reality is, of course, like if you're think about back when you were a kid, like maybe before being a teenager,
and no part of your body was the same.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but you
None
use
of the
the word.
cells.
You tell stories. You're like, oh yeah, I fell off a trampoline.
Or similarly, when you're playing Mario and your character dies, you go, I fell down a hole.
Yeah.
Because really,
that was an extension
just,
of
that's
yourself.
just part of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, other good books as far as fiction stuff is concerned, which we could put some up.
So
there.
that was Infinity Born.
Yeah.
Was that book?
Infinity Born's good.
Highly recommend. It's crazy.
The ones that we recommend often are Codex Alera, which is a huge book series.
I think that's the one that I don't recommend.
correct.
Yeah.
I recommend it.
Sam and Seth recommend it. And I don't.
So
It turns out people can have different opinions.
crazy.
about
So
stuff,
flip
you
a
know?
3-sided dice.
The one that Adam recommends is the Culture series.
But Seth doesn't.
Also, I don't.
And Sam doesn't.
I've never read it.
Oh, no, Sam doesn't.
I'm indifferent.
Yeah.
I tried reading it and I was like, nah. So it depends. You know?
Hey, everybody has different tastes.
And then literally all of Neil Stephenson,
Mhm.
pretty much.
The other book that is fantastic is not a fiction book, but it's written in really good storytelling. Is actually the biography of Abe Lincoln, which is the Team of Rivals book. If you want something to blow your socks off as far as storytelling goes, and just to sort of inspire the crap out of you, it's a good one, and it's thick. It's like
Is
600
it
pages.
is it the storytelling and sort of like in the fictional senses, and they fill in all the gaps with stuff that could be true but isn't necessarily?
No, I think they managed, because everybody used to write letters back then.
Yeah.
They like have all of them.
Okay.
So the woman who wrote it did like just an unreal amount of research and was able to really thoroughly stitch this thing together.
Okay,
So I don't
so
believe
it really
it's-
is like fully nonfiction.
Yes,
Okay.
it's fully nonfiction, but it's told in a really good way that it feels more like just a story that you're reading about. So
Cool.
I would recommend that one. It's incredible.
I'll have to get on that. All right. So next question comes from Anonymous, who said, I just want to thank you for your work. I started making games a couple of years ago after being diagnosed with CHF and COPD. I enjoy your podcasts and they give me inspiration to fight and continue on. So
Yeah.
thank you. That sucks a lot.
Yeah.
That those things happened, but
it's good that you're, keep it on. We appreciate that we could be some people to give some light to your life.
yeah,
That's good.
keep on making games.
Yeah. And if you get one done, you want to kick it over our way so we can play it.
Yeah, we'll play it. Yeah.
Sweet.
All right, next question comes from French Toast Mafia, who says yes to back catalog arcade app. $4.99 would be cool if the games are rebalanced. I would pay for future releases as IAPs, a la Zen Pinball. So a couple episodes ago, we were talking about the idea of releasing a Butterscotch arcade, which would be a game where we take all of our old free games, we package all of them up together as one app, rip out all the IAPs, rip out all the ads, rebalance them so that they aren't freemium titles anymore. They're just pay once and there they are. So that's what this is referring to.
Or we'll do a pay daily model where you just have to pay
just every day. Yeah. Where
You're actually going to tithe your income.
Yep.
Oh, actually, yeah. Do you think we can do like a Butterscotch
Tithe.
Yeah.
Like
We'll
we'll
just
start a church, right?
I guess that's kind of what
The
what's that thing
subscription
called?
is.
Yeah, and Patreon. Patreon is just a tithing system.
Yeah. Yeah, we do need to figure out how to sort of get that religious exemption flag.
Yeah.
Set up a building, put some kind of a symbol somewhere. I feel like we could.
The Church of Shenanigans.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
Get that tax-free status. Yeah. So this is something that we're talking about doing. We do have a couple extra questions about the Butterscotch arcade, which we had this is still just kind of an idea. We don't have concrete plans. So it's interesting to kind of see what people are thinking about it. So we have a question from Dormouse85 who says, longtime fan, I have buttered up every game, bought Crash-Ins on Android, Steam, and GOG. I would gladly pay for a Bscotch arcade if it includes Bscotch perks and removal of free-to-play mechanics. So
That's what we're trying to do.
That would be
Exactly what it would be,
that would
yeah.
be the plan. So thanks for the support on that. And then we have another question from Zarnov who says, I've paid to turn off ads in your free games. Free is in quotes, by the way, which I can respect. Will that count somehow when I buy the Bscotch arcade? Should I just skip the Bscotch arcade? Just do what you want. I think problem is we can't.
Yeah, we can't because it's not our
change.
store.
Yeah, so on the stores we can't change the purchase price for you based on something else you've done. Right? Because you're logged in, say, to your Apple account or your Steam account, And buying the game is that's just between you and Valve or you and Google or whatever. And unfortunately, we have no.
Which would be awesome if you could do that.
It would be nice if somehow
it would be possible if there was a one-off couponing system sort of a thing, like a discount code and stuff. But for some idiotic reason, none of those major stores have any kind of a discount system.
Yeah, you could either. So you could hand out keys for free on Steam, and I think that's all we got. That's all we got.
That's the best we can do.
So, and we don't even know if we would put this on Steam. I guess it would be no, but I don't know.
Who knows?
No, we probably would. I think we absolutely will do it.
Yeah,
if we make it. If we do it.
But we're going to. I'm gonna try to force it to happen by
declaring
it.
Because as we all know, as soon as we make an announcement, we definitely follow through.
Definitely every time.
All right, next question comes from Mitron. Support question. Have you guys ever encountered a reported bug or problem you couldn't fix?
Yes.
Yeah, when people had broken their own shit.
Ever had to offer a refund to disgruntled users as a consequence? So I will say one of our most common support requests is somebody saying, I didn't use your cloud system, then my phone broke. Or then somehow my save got corrupted, or I got a new phone. Can you recover my save? And we're always just like, no, because
literally
what can we do?
Yeah.
It's gone.
That's what
we provided that service, and you just didn't use it. It's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
We're not time travelers.
There's that one. There's we get, as Sam noted, we have many ones that we cannot fix that we then discover are from people hacking their games and then wasting our time.
Yeah, cut it out.
But there's one in particular that's driven me crazy since the inception of Butterscotch ID, which is that in Butterscotch ID for our free-to-play games that have coins in them, you can buy coins, particularly, I guess coins are a thing that you earn and then spend, right?
Yeah, so Quadrupus
you can buy the balloons, right? And then the other games, they're just a thing that exists. But we actually sync those with the Butterscotch ID service as a unique value, and it's done as kind of banking system, where you can add to it, but it doesn't like max. It doesn't take the max of like all your devices or whatever. It's literally just like adding coins to a pile, and so it has this carefully structured mechanism to make sure that if you spend coins somewhere, they're now spent, right? So that way people can't cheat and hack and whatever. But for some reason, very rarely, but frequently enough that we get reports of it, all of a sudden people's coins will just be at zero. Just suddenly.
And there's not actually that much code that goes into making this happen.
There's very little.
And so we've gone through with a fine-tooth comb. We're
repeatedly.
What could be doing?
Don't know what's
we have no idea.
It's a total, like the actual code that involves sort of like moving the numbers between the server and the device and everything. It's maybe like 20 lines of code.
Yeah.
Man, I'm so glad we're not a bank.
Yeah, I can't imagine the shit they have to do.
Oh my gosh.
So because a bank can't just go, oh shit, we deleted your $1,000. No problem. We'll just
put it back.
Right? Because now all of a sudden the IRS is like, wait a minute, are they just like
generating money?
They're just like changing the numbers.
Wait, money isn't even real?
That's true, actually.
I know. But banks actually do that, where they'll just suddenly delete your money or put your money in somebody else's account and whatever. So that actually does happen.
Now listen, I have to go on a very brief tangent about money, because this is something that blew my fucking mind when I first started taking economics courses. Is most people don't realize this, but it's easy. Like on the one hand, it's easy to say like money isn't real, like it's an imaginary construct. But what most people don't realize is that only about 10% of the money that is moving around actually does exist.
Physically, you mean?
Physically. Because what happens is you put your money into a bank. Like let's say you put $1,000 into a bank. They have a requirement that they have to keep 10% of it in cash so that they can, move cash around, right? So they take that $900 and they loan it to somebody. So that person has $900. What do? They spend it on something. So that $900 moves to a third person. What do they do with it? Put it back in the bank. So the bank had $1,000. They have $1,000 in your account. Somebody else shows up with $900, puts it back in the bank. Now there's $1,900, right? So the bank can take that $900 they just got, loan $890 of it out, or $810 of it out to somebody else, that goes to another person, that person puts it in the bank, right? And so what it actually comes out to be is that it's about a 10-to-1 ratio, that about 90% of money that banks have recorded like having in accounts does not actually physically exist.
Interesting.
And is that what they use to pay their CEOs with?
Yeah, they use all of it to pay
So-
their
all that
CEOs.
imaginary
would
money?
you say?
Well, this is why there are issues with, there's a concept called a run on the bank, where if everybody goes to the bank to try to withdraw their money at
Bank
once,
implodes.
the whole economy implodes because that money literally doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist.
So technically, if you put your money in the
But
bank,
the feds are on the hook for it anyway, which means in the end, we all pay for it in the future because that imaginary money is actually the money from our children and our children's children in the future.
Right. And this is why, for example, like started the Great Depression, everything just kind of went to shit because everybody went to the bank to pull their money out, which actually exacerbates the problem because now all of a sudden the banks collapse because they don't have this money. Nobody has this money.
Yep.
It isn't there.
But the federal government has insured all this money that doesn't exist.
Right. So in order to get around that, the federal government, if this did happen, the federal government would probably have to print money,
Yeah.
which make inflation go up.
which makes inflation go up like crazy because, as we just discussed, as soon as you put $1 into the bank,
It's
it
$10.
becomes like $10 or $15, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why is the margin only 10%? Couldn't you?
It's just that decay. Or I mean, why do they set it that
Why
way?
is it a requirement?
Because people want to make as much money as possible.
Because the idea is money needs to move around the economy to keep
Yeah.
things going, right? And that usually happens through the form of loans and stuff like that. So people start businesses. So banks need to be able to loan money out.
So would you say it's similar to our discussion earlier about the last time you die is when your ghost stops haunting people?
Uh-huh.
So you're kind of like a dollar bill in this case, right?
Yeah. You are duplicating yourself around where you exist as a lot of sort of ghostly instances, but really there's only one.
It's the same thing with the money.
So how would you have like a run on a person, right? If you wanted to basically, if you're like, okay, now a person's basically, they exist as a single entity, but now they're banked. They've been loaned out now as a
They're
ghost.
possessing a lot of people.
Well,
a lot of people.
here's the thing. Unlike money, a person can't be withdrawn from another person.
Can they not though?
Probably not. Right. A person's ghost just keeps getting duplicated. I
So
don't.
this is the old Buddhist saying, like a light that gives is not diminished by lighting others or something like that.
Yeah, it's like when you take a candle and light another candle with it. You
don't have
just
less fire,
two
you just have more
You
fire.
got two flames now.
Great.
But you will have a lot less wax over time.
That's true.
Yeah. So yeah, but that was something that when I first learned about it, I was just like, it's kind of like Adam when you're teaching. At the beginning when you were teaching Andy all this stuff about how the internet works, and his once he was like really getting it, his first comment was, "How the fuck does any of this stuff actually function?"
Yeah.
Because the foundations of this are insane.
Yeah.
It's a rickety structure.
It is nuts.
Yep.
It's amazing that anything works.
It's amazing that it all works because we just want it to keep working.
Yeah, it's
we
our,
all just keep
our
it
collective
going.
will.
And speaking of
holding it all
Andy
together.
and Sure, both, we're celebrating their 1 year Butterscotch
So
anniversary.
congrats.
Yeah.
Congrats. We're gonna go out for some barbecue after this
Yeah,
podcast.
they've come a long way. We've all come a long way.
Yeah.
We've all learned
Facts.
a lot. It's been fun.
So thanks, dudes.
Yeah. All right. So next question comes from Jaeger Sama, who says, "From what I've gathered, you don't use any paid advertising for your games.
Correct.
Is this based primarily on a data source, budget constraints, or some other factor?"
This is based on the fact that premium games have a cap in terms of how much money they make if they don't have any IPs in them, which ours do not, which means that the maximum value we extract from someone on mobile, if they pay full price for the game,
Extract, kind of like drilling for oil.
Yep.
Is
Is about-
like each player lines up, we just punch a hole in their
Yep.
chest,
just steal their.
suck those dollar bills in their bank account.
So the maximum money
They're
we get
imaginary. It's fine.
is about $350, right? Is that what it comes out to?
About
On mobile.
$350.
$350 per purchase of the game, because 30% of it goes to the stores. So, and that's
And
that.
you have to pay taxes on it and do all that stuff. Once
Correct.
Once
So
we finally get it.
It ends up being just basically a penny. So the problem is that with the only way you can advertise is if it costs less to get a person to buy your game than it does to. But then it does.
This is referred to as the CPI, cost per install.
Correct. So if it costs less to get that person than the money that you get from the person, then you're in business, right? You get
and
a
enough
money printing
less
machine.
to matter.
Correct. There's a margin that you want to make sure you're within.
If you're making 1 cent more, then yeah.
no, we're
and,
spending time.
and if you didn't spend money that you shouldn't have to get them. So like, cause what we, this is a slight tangent, but on Apple, they started doing
Search
advertisements,
ads.
right? Search ads. And we found, we're like, holy crap, actually, like it worked. We saw that we had a whole bunch of people going, because they gave everybody like a free trial sort of a thing. Like, oh crap, we saw a lot of people go from like click the ad to get into Crashlands, right? And then we look and we discovered that if you do a search for Crashlands in the app, the first thing that pops up is the ad for Crashlands. The second thing is Crashlands itself.
So we would have been the top result.
We would have been the top result regardless, because it turned out that the biggest converter in the search, because they showed you the search terms that were used, was just Crashlands, was the title of our fucking game.
So it was
Which
people.
means we were paying to get the
So had we been paying, because this was a free trial, right? But had we been paying, that actually just would have meant that, yeah, we may have had a positive margin on that. But since we didn't need to do it in the first place, it would have still gotten all of those same purchases. We would have been losing money. Right.
So the reason we don't do the ad spend is just because it's actually because of the way we've chosen to do our business, which is not providing a bunch of other ways for people to pay us within the games. Then that means that the lifetime value of any given player is basically like $3 on mobile.
It's just exactly the cost of the game plus after all the cuts.
And the cost per install has been going up drastically over time to the point now where it's like
advertising costs.
Yes, I mean, you know what it is now. It's
More like bad advertising.
I think it's like $8.
Is it $8
or something
now?
like that?
Because a game like Clash of Clans or whatever else oftentimes can have something like a lifetime value of $20
On average. Yeah.
So yeah, they'll just buy the ads, and that's a money making machine, which is great, good for them.
Well, and I think
They just get to print money.
there's it's a supply demand, it's a bidding system, the way that ads work. And so what you have is you've got Clash of Clans, Candy Crush, Clash Royale, basically these sort of like top 10 money makers on mobile, each of which are making, in the millions per day. Several of them are over $1 billion a year games. And so they're all competing with each other basically for the maximum exposure. And so they're buying up as many ads as they can to try to drive up their user base, but there's only so many ads to be seen because there's only so many people playing games and seeing ads.
Because what they're actually buying is your attention time, right? Which is finite.
Yeah. So there's a like, let's say every day there's 1 billion ads that go out. It's probably a fuckload more than that, but let's just say there's 1 billion ads that go out every day. If Candy Crush is buying 200 million of them, Clash Royale's buying 200 million of them, blah, blah, blah. And at the end, so they're all bidding against each other and they have a shitload of money to do that. And then at the very end, there's like 1% of the ads left for the rest of us.
But also, all
we
ads
have
are
to
not
know,
equal because they're buying also position when it comes to ads too.
Right. Because the more they pay, the better visibility their ads will get. And so then at the end is us getting the scraps where we're like, when you buy ads to advertise your game, you are competing against King.com and Supercell and whatever for that ad space, and it's just getting real expensive.
We can't do it. We literally
can't do it. Only they can. So, all right. So I think that's all the time we have. I liked this episode. It got weird. It was good.
Oh, we should mention. So we're looking at getting our merch store up and running soon.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah.
And Monique's crushing the merch store.
Yeah. So one thing that we need is that we're going to be ordering two different styles of mugs for coffee with Butterscotch, with some little goofy sayings on them and stuff. And we need help picking which two. So if you're, say, in the market for a mug, go to podcast.bscotch.net. We'll put just a link up there to a form where you can pick sort of your top two choices from the couple of goofy sayings that we have. So I'm not going to say any of them because I don't want to,
They are from the podcast, so they should be familiar somewhat.
Yeah. So lend us a hand and cast your vote for which ones we should get, and then we'll get them in the shop for when it is up and running soon.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's all the time we have. So thank you, everybody. We'd like to thank our studio wrangler, Monique, for putting this episode together. Our producer, Fat Bard, for making us sound good. And the Bscotch dev team, Andy, Tifa, and Shure, for continuing to jam on stuff while we're doing the podcast. And a special thanks to our community moderators who keep our Discord and forums up and running and pruned and, jerk free and all that good stuff. And of course, we'd like to thank our listeners for coming back every week to listen to us. And if you want to get more involved in the Butterscotch community, hop into our Discord server, which is up at bit.ly/bsdiscord. Come say hi. We're in there. We also don't advertise this show. We depend completely on word of mouth and good reviews. So if you want to help us grow, tell your friends, just tell everybody you know. Head over to Apple Podcasts or wherever else you get your podcast. give us a review. Say a few words about, this podcast, about all the ways that it's changed your life, that has changed your torso.
All the ways in which we've possessed you permanently.
Yep.
Yeah.
Really,
you are just us now.
Really, the whole point of this is we're just haunting everybody with our mind ghosts.
You got a little bit of butterscotch in you.
Yeah. But yeah, every little bit helps. Everything, every little sort of comment and star and all that stuff, it goes a long way. So we'd appreciate that. So thank you all for listening.
And also, Seth's going to add something to this end part right now about mailbox.bscotch.net.
Yeah.
Which is a place you could go if you want to send us like a physical item or something, like that would be how you would do it.
Yeah. So I'm gonna add that part.
Yep.
So all right. So thank you for listening, and we'll see y'all next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.